Since this commentary was recorded, I'm delighted to say that the oft-mentioned Vincent Brimble, who plays Tarpok in Warriors of the Deep, has returned to Doctor Who in Village of the Angels, and this time you can see his face. Welcome to this omnibus edition of Toby Hadoke's Time Travels, Happy Times and Places, in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a guest to choose a story and nominate their favourite things about each episode. I have to watch, be positive, and guess what those favourite things are.
Hello, Toby. My name is Jonny Morris, and I'm a writer. I write Doctor Who stories for Big Finish. I write articles for Doctor Who magazine. And I've recently co-written a huge book for BBC Books called Doctor Who, The Monster Vault. So I'm quite well versed in all things Doctor Who. The story I've chosen is the Peter Davison classic adventure from 1984, Warriors of the Deep. Because this has a great place of affection in my heart, because it's one of the first ones I got on video. So I have probably seen Warriors of the Deep more times than I have seen anything else in my life. And I dearly love it. I am completely and deliberately blind to all its flaws. I think it is a true classic, very, very exciting, and brilliantly written, directed and acted. Special effects, absolute perfection from start to finish, as I'm sure you will observe when you do your watch.
Well, hello. It's episode 1 of Warriors of the Deep, so let's see if we can sync up our viewing by all pressing play at the same time in 3, 2, 1. Well, hello everybody. We're going back to, I think, January 1984 this was broadcast, because I seem to recall, because it was certainly before the start of school, I had been sent off to boarding school, so I missed Doctor Who this season. Well, I didn't. The vicar taped it for me, but that's another story. Apart from the first of the season, which must have started before school did, and I think I just know it's January 1984, but before I went back to school, and I certainly remember watching the first couple of episodes at my friend Ollie's grand's house, and it was so exciting because it had been announced in the Doctor Who Radio Times 20th anniversary special, which I still have a copy of in a drawer upstairs, not in as good nick as I'd like, saying, you know, it gave a brief précis of all the stories. It had done all the stories that had been out, and that was a treasure trove of hitherto undiscovered delights. And then at the end it said, and here's a preview of what's coming up, which Doctor Who: A Celebration, the other great publication of Doctor Who's 20th anniversary, which covered some of the same ground as the Radio Times, but it didn't have what was coming up. It had longer descriptions and behind-the-scenes facts from the stories that had come before, but it didn't have info about what was coming next. And and all we knew was that the Silurians and the Sea Devils were back and together, which seemed like such an obvious thing. It was really exciting reading that the Sea Devils were related to the Silurians, which, you know, one had done when one discovered the history of the show, which the Target books didn't tell you. You know, the Target covers didn't tell you. So it was when you discovered, you realised, oh, actually, the you know, it's all weaved together. And I loved the idea that they were sort of, the Sea Devils was cousins to the Silurians, and then the idea that they'd appear in the same story. This was going to be amazing. And nobody really likes Warriors of the Deep that much. Oh, I love the hidden spaceship there. But I've got a bit of a confession to make. I have a soft spot for Warriors of the Deep because it is my favourite genre of story, which is lots of people trapped in a place, many of whom die. I don't know why. And they don't even have to be necessarily the most interesting characters, which I'm not sure they are in this story. But that kind of works because there's a sort of stoical 50s B-movie thing going on about the characters and indeed the acting, which I'm not sure is deliberate, but I still adore. Davison's hair's very short here, isn't it? Used to him being a bit sort of floppier. I think he's been filming something else. But yes, I mean, I remember, you know, certain things about this disappointing one, which maybe we will discuss, but I hope not. I'll be interested to see what it is that Jonny likes about it. His is obviously very tied in with his childhood, which is absolutely fair enough for the purposes of this exercise. You can choose whatever you like. I don't think the sort of the sea-based costumes have dated particularly. I think we'd probably make them less shiny and colourful, but I think that sort of thing will go in and out of. There is a bit of an 80s vibe. Oh, a little bit of film, a probe on film. I'm not sure we'll ever go to having quite that sort of makeup on our sea-based cruise. Although Maddox is looking suitably sweaty, which I like. In fact, it's an incredibly good set here from Tony Burrow. And they're really largely quite solid looking. And you know, the gleaming white thing, yeah, it's not what one imagined. It's certainly not what the script editor imagined, is he? And the script writer, sorry, imagined, you know, rust and metal and rivets and all of that, which is kind of how I imagined the Ark in space. So I know the gleaming white thing. I know the logic behind it. It's cold. It's clinical. That kind of works for one kind of atmosphere. But actually, oh, he just knocked his Silurian panel there. This is great. They did not wake up as we had planned in the first place. There's something about a monster saying in the first place that is rather quaint. I adore the fact that it's my friend Vincent Brimble. I will perhaps go into that a little bit later. I have lots of weird little connections with this story that might be of interest to me and nobody else. But Vincent is a fine actor. Here at the bottom of the credits playing Tarpok, who was originally, I believe, well, they were Skibbus and Tarpok. Oh, and Skibbus I have a connection with as well. I had some friends at university who were amused every time I said, "Excellent Skibbus." So they actually got a cat and called the cat Skibbus. And my dear friend Sarah, who now knows Billy off of Delta and the Bannermen, it all winds together, kept the cat called Skibbus. But Tarpok, they were originally called First Companion and Second Companion, Skibbus and Tarpok. And then I think they figured, let's give them names, it's only fair. Always looks better on your CV to have a name, even if it's Tarpok. But he was originally called Tampon, and I'm not going to tell you probably the thought processes behind why they thought they should change that name. Goodness me, I don't want to be X-rated. I remember thinking Maddox was a bit weedy when I first saw this, and then when I got it years later on video, which I got quite late because it was one that I had seen, and I think I didn't particularly care for it, being very impressed with what Martin Neal does in actually quite a difficult part. Nobody wants to play the sort of moany ingenue, well, you know, sort of apprentice nuclear guy who's under pressure and being manipulated. It's all fairly thankless stuff to do, and I actually think he does a very, very decent job of it. And I remember being quite pleased. He became a bit of a semi-regular in a thing called Down to Earth with Warren Clark and Pauline Quirk quite some time later, so his career had sustained. And I've got a feeling, was he in a bit of Secret Army Orchestra or something? May have mistaken that. Whereas Nitsa Saul, who plays Karina, was definitely in Kessler. Sentinel 7, and I don't remember this. Again, I remember getting this on video, and this sequence was absolute news to me. I'd not remembered the the episode delaying appearance of Sentinel-7. It all ties in, of course, because down in the sea base they say, oh, we've picked up, one of our probes has picked up an object, so that gets everybody on alert. So it sort of ties in, but this would probably be quickly dispensed with, if used at all, in modern here. Who Davison has that breathless kind of... He's actually, for an actor that doesn't look or remind you really in any way of Patrick Troughton, he has that sort of breathy urgency that Troughton gives everything. And Troughton is probably his well, he's got a bit Harley when he gets tetchy as well. He's very clever, Davison. I think he's such a good actor. And I love the fact that Pennant Roberts, the director, when he was presented with all-male casts, would always turn a couple of characters into women. That probably doesn't seem particularly bold now. Then I think it was. And he's, to his credit, in fact, he gets a lot of stick, Pennant Roberts. He would cast women in male roles without changing any of the dialogue, which means we get Ingrid Pitt as Solo. How well that pays off is up to you. But Preston was also male, and we get Tara Ward playing the part. I remember watching this with some friends from university, and they thought that locking away in a strong box until our task is completed was an absurd line. It is quite a laboured analogy, metaphor, whatever. It's quite a laboured way of saying don't let your conscience bother you. Lock it away in a strong box. Seems odd imagery to invoke. But the other thing Pennant Roberts did was that whilst he liked using people he'd used before, he would also, I think, earmark a couple of parts for actors he didn't know, he didn't work with, or were new. And again, those two things, the turning male parts into female parts and using people he'd not used before, giving people a break, may sound tiny little things. They are huge in a profession where breaking through is difficult, where at this time, having female parts that weren't rubbish was quite difficult. So although he gets some stick for some aspects of his direction, we can't all be good at everything, and I think those two sides of him, and apparently I never had the pleasure, apparently he was an absolutely lovely fella. And Tony Burrow is an Oscar-nominated designer who designed these sets. He got an Oscar nomination for, I think, the Richard III that Ian McKellen did on film. And he designed The Keeper of Traken as well, and For to Doomsday. He's a very, very good designer, and there's the double layer of this set gives it sturdiness, gives it space. There's an argument, of course, to say what it needs is sturdiness, sure, but less space and more crampedness. You'd lower the ceiling, you'd make it like a submarine, underwater, claustrophobic. I buy that argument, but I don't think we lose 100% for having the slightly in a Doctor Who series that can sometimes feel cramped. Now, you see, if the lighting was like this for the whole thing, it would look extraordinary. Bit of darkness, bit of red light. So I understand Johnny Byrne, the scriptwriter's disappointment that it was perhaps a bit brighter than he had hoped. But you can see that the designer was actually, and you've got the double set there with, you could see the feet of guards sort of walking on the second layer, which again sort of just opens it up and gives the picture a bit more scope than normal. I used to love Tegan's dress. It's quite 80s, but I adored Tegan's dress at this time. There's a brilliant picture that came with the Doctor Who Radio Times 20th anniversary special that is Tegan in that dress, Turlough and the Doctor with a bit of dry ice, and that adorned my bedroom wall for many, many years. And this red lighting's very, very effective. This is atmospheric, and of course the idea of, in 1984, they said this is set in 2084, so exactly 100 years in the future. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think we're now less keen to have such patterns, and you'd be more impressive if you set it 103 years in the future or whatever. It just seems a little too neat. But the whole nuclear thing was big. I mean, the BBC did a nuclear war season. And did they show? They certainly showed the war game by Peter, what's his face, which was a mock documentary about what would happen in the event of a nuclear strike, and it was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen, simply because it was so unshowy, black and white. I had people like Michael Aspel playing news reporters. It was a faux documentary. It scared the life out of me, and I thought I was going to die. And you know, the threat of nuclear war was very real. When the wind blows, it was Z for Zachariah. You know, it was something we were very preoccupied with. The fact that two superpowers locked in this sort of stalemate, staring each other out. All it would take would be one loony with his finger on the button, and we'd be in trouble. I wonder how the orders are given in terms of wearing your makeup on the sea base, because it's quite avant-garde, and I wonder what the thinking is. I mean, again, it's the 80s, isn't it? So, but you know, if you're doing Alien, the whole thing about Alien was that it was more down to earth. People had dirty cloths, people had open shirts, people sweated a bit, people, you know, didn't wash. It was, and that's what had been the major breakthrough with it. So it does seem a little bit retro a few years later to go, no, what we need to do is give people eyeshadow and blusher and yes, Pennant, we know you've cast a woman in a man's role, but she's going to get a whackload of lipstick. I do like that little bit of business where they go to the Doctor and Turlo try to open the door one way, and Tegan just very casually slides it open the other way. Skibbus, Iktar and Tarpok. Now, because my friend Vincent, who plays Tarpok, wasn't originally going to be in it, because Tarpok was going to be played by Norman Comer. But then Robert Ashby, who was going to play Iktar, got a BBC Shakespeare. And I know this because I worked with Vincent at the Ludlow Festival. And then I later worked with... prior to that, I'd worked with Bob Ashby, who'd shown me some of his show reel with his BBC Shakespeare, Pericles, and because he later went on to play the Borad for Pennant Roberts, but had had to drop out of playing Iktar. He had a wonderful voice, Robert Ashby, and he was a former partner of Louise Jameson. So Robert delighted in telling me on how much he hated Doctor Who. But he didn't tell me he'd failed to get in Warriors of the Deep. But he had, so Norman Comer got promoted to play Iktar, and Vincent came in quite last minute to play Tarpok. That's a bit of Silurian politics for you guys. But Vincent, I then worked with, I think the year after I worked with Bob at the Ludlow Festival, I was a local, spear-carrying college student, and all the actors who'd been in Doctor Who were very kind to my tedious questions. I remember my friend Oliver and I, as we watched this, knowing the Sea Devils and the Silurians are going to turn up, going, oh, well, that's the end of the story. You've basically just gone, well, you have some stuff here that can kill the monsters that are invading, which seemed to us massively naff. Now, of course, the reason it's foreshadowed is because the question of whether you use it is the moral dilemma. But to us, that was the end of the story. We just went, well, they're going to use that to kill the monsters then. Once you've introduced something that can kill your monsters, it's very unlikely that then won't kill your monsters and you'll do something else. But actually, as I say again, when I revisited this when I was older, the moral dilemma and the Doctor's righteous indignation and his refusal to use it first without thinking of something else does raise some interesting issues and sort of pumps the drama up. So I still think it is a bit odd to go, we've found the solution in episode 1. But then, of course, you don't want to introduce it in episode 4 and everyone goes, oh, great, okay, in one bound they were free. So if you're going to have something that is inimical to bad guys. I suppose they did choose the right place, but I think it does mean they painted themselves into a corner a little bit. I mean, I love that the baddies have baddie names. They're called Nilsson and Solau. They behave like baddies. They look like baddies. And Ian McCulloch has a baddie's voice. I mean, they both have a baddie's voice. Ingrid Pitt has an accent, which is enough to be a baddie in 1984, I'm afraid. He doesn't have a line later, Vorschach, where he goes, "I trusted you, Nielsen." You go, why? It was really obvious he was glowering away with his hooded eyes like a baddie. But, you know, this is when I was growing up, the films that I loved were things like Alien and Aliens, and the Doctor Who's were all the season 5s. I was, read the books, and Horror of Fang Rock, the ones where a group of people are trapped in a place, and you have to get sad about who dies next. You have Poseidon Adventure, a group of people in a place doing a perilous thing, and, every 5 minutes one of them dies. And I thought that's what drama was. And in fact, I can sort of live with drama being that. So, and the Satan Pit, Impossible Planet, it's a bit, a bit like that. It's a way of doing things that Doctor Who returns to, and I, for one, don't mind, even though I understand that there are, if that doesn't float people's boats, well, it makes mine sail. They're doing lots of good door action there to Mark Strickson, who's always busy as well. And again, this is very... even walking up and down corridors. These guys have to do so much of this. The fact that they go to great lengths to make it interesting is something we must be grateful for. It's an undervalued a skill. Well, it's a redundant skill now, but I think it would have been on your spotlight page. Very good in corridors, basic sword fighting, conversational French, and juggling. And I remember Vincent coming to my house and watching a bit of this with me. I made him, and he said that Nigel Humphreys, who played Bulick, was with his agency at the time. So maybe that was, who I think was probably somebody like Barry Burnett. But Nigel Humphreys is still about, and he was in everything. He was in Scum, and he was the lorry driver. Solow's done an evil smile. You're bad. Nigel Humphreys as Bulick he was the lorry driver that kills Andy, the first regular to get killed off in EastEnders. Not the first person to die in EastEnders, because EastEnders begins with a corpse. Reg Cox, played by Johnny Clayton, who was one of the planetarians in Mission to the Unknown. Why do I know these things? But Nigel Humphreys was everywhere, always playing sort of stoic. He was very good value in because he could do sort of middle management types, but also lorry drivers. But hasn't been seen for a while. He's turned up at a few events that friends have been to, but not sort of fan events and stuff like that. But I don't think anyone's ever managed to get an interview with him or a signing or anything, which is weird, because he was sort of somebody you took for granted because he was on telly all the time. Clever set here, because I think there's only 6 Sea Devils, and thanks to a mirror there looks like a lot more. And I like the green lighting and the smoke. That's all quite atmospheric. And this is this is massive. It's got a real sense of scale about it, and water inside is very impressive stuff. And I suppose I've got to be choosing something I like about this episode. What have I enjoyed particularly about this episode? It's weird, because it's been chuntering along, really. I do like that the revival of the Sea Devils. They look pretty cool. But it might have to be, I might have to choose the corridor acting of the regulars, because they've done some marvellous things with doors and going one way and coming the other. I mean, they haven't interacted with anybody yet. This is the first time they interact with anybody. When I say run, that's a lovely thing. And I think there's quite. He kicks this guy in the head, doesn't he? Here we go. I think he's about to thwack somebody in the face. Look at this, bang! But that's cool. I talk about the sturdy sets, and I always say that Doctor Who doesn't have many wobbly sets, but this is a sea base that might fall to bits. Nice stunt, but I don't know. I mean, I know Turlough has recently been on a quest to kill the Doctor, but if I slip down in my bath or fall over in a puddle, and my friends go, "He's drowned immediately," I will be furious, because it will take you a lot longer to drown than that. But it was a lovely shot and a great stunt, and a good sequence that actually, and setting up a sort of sweaty red light, oppressive, atmospheric base under siege. What's not to love? And they've called the third Silurian Tarpok, which has saved us all any number of levels of embarrassment. Vincent's not bottom billed, is he? They say, no, it's Paroli. I will talk to you about Paroli, who was also at a Ludlow Festival when I wasn't there. Oh, and Alistair Mitchell, who is the cameraman in the water sequence, which was done at Shepperton, because they couldn't get to Ealing, and which is why it's on videotape, because you could use videotape at Shepperton. Alistair Mitchell is the dad, or was, he's dead now, of the woman who wrote 50 Shades of Grey. So 50 Shades of Grey is connected to Doctor Who via Warriors of the Deep. You heard it here first, folks. Right, now I've got to... Where have I put... Because I've got to pause. Before we start again. Oh, here it is. Right, so I'll have to go back on that when we do episode 2. I was getting carried away with my 50 Shades of Grey. Well, you'll have to tie me up and whip me in punishment. So I assume that's what it's about. I've never read it. I think I will choose. I don't think it's too glib to choose. The sort of, and I have mentioned it in previous commentaries about Davison. Is the sort of corridor, the A to B acting of the regulars, who are always finding ways to make that sort of necessary stuff quite interesting. So, and when Turlough and the Doctor talking about the nuclear stuff, which is a bit of exposition, but it's important stuff. They're doing that whilst struggling to open a door, and then Tegan opens the door the correct way, and then you get the proton. Yes, probably. So the conversation on the script is nothing to do with the action going on, is rather neatly then put into a scene that's just slightly more interesting, slightly more witty. And then there was a bit later where Mark Strickson sort of flinched because he nearly got caught by the shutting door. And I just think they keep it lively, especially when they haven't had a chance to speak to another human being in the cast, bar Sentinel 6, which is the voice of James Coombs, who is Paroli. More of him later. So the corridor acting of the regulars is what I am choosing as my favourite thing from episode 1 of Warriors of the Deep. What has Jonny Morris chosen?
My best thing about episode 1 is the fact that in the future, men wear eyeshadow and cheek blusher, thus suggesting a whole sort of revolution in sort of the whole gender androgyny thing, which is wonderful.
Well, actually, he does make a point, because, I suppose looking back on it, in my fusty old cardigan, and going, oh, it's a bit high camp because it's 80s blusher and stuff. In fact, actually, instead of being a bit of a throwback to the sort of glitzy 80s, in fact, it might be a very forward-thinking look at the fact that gender is certainly not as clearly delineated now as it was betwixt 1984 and even sort of 10 years ago or so, and that actually, instead of being a bit of a sort of camp misalignment, that I sort of mocked in my heteronormative way, guilty as charged, it actually might end up being quite a prescient thing to be celebrated, that actually people are comfortable to express themselves in totally different ways, and that things that we associate with male and female are actually a bit more fluid and interesting than that. So yeah, I will go along with that, Jonny Morris. That's something that I sort of highlighted as being a bit silly. You quite rightly seen in a sort of more positive and forward thinking way, and I will take that. Yeah, okay, good. I'm happy with my choice. I'm happy with Johnny's choice. I'm gonna have a sip of water. Although actually, I'll be careful, because I mean I could drown in that. Well, until next time, hold your breath. Well, welcome back to Warriors of the Deep. It's episode 2. We're all in a base. We're about to get besieged. Press play now. And there we go. So, welcome back. Opening story of season 21. Doctor Who was riding so high at this point. The last thing we had seen had been the 5 Doctors. Ed Stradley makes a very interesting point in the documentary of this, that this is the sort of point that Doctor Who started its downward turn in the eyes of the public, in that, it's riding high from the 5 Doctors. The Doctor Who celebration was out, Doctor Who 20th anniversary special was out, and then this story starts the next run, and it's on a brightly lit sea base, and has the end of episode 2 of this, which is a clip that's been used to illustrate, even by Michael Grade on Room 101, how bad, in inverted commas, Doctor Who is. Now, I have to mention this now, because the stunt guard here, the one without the moustache, is Trevor Steedman. Who's Trevor Steedman? He's Private Wierzbowski. Who's Private Wierzbowski? Well, anyone who loves the film Aliens will know that all of the Marines have a sort of different thing going for them, and there's lots of Doctor Who types in there. Rico Ross from Greatest Show in the Galaxy, Tipping the stuntman from the McCoy era, and Trevor Steedman, who plays Wierzbowski, who you see in about 3 shots, and you don't see die, but there is, when it's sort of all going doolally on the head cams, you hear Wierzbowski, and he goes, ah! And I think there's been a website dedicated to Wierzbowski, and he's a bit of a sort of cult figure amongst people who are fans of the Marines in Aliens, and he is the most elusive of them all, because there's about 3 shots of him. He doesn't do an awful lot, but all of those Marines are great sort of characters, and the whole thing that they've got going on between them is a source of fascination for Aliens fans. And it's Trevor Steedman, because he was a stuntman. He was a UK stuntman. Died a couple of years ago. About 4 years ago now. So there we are. So a name, yes. So a link to Aliens. That sequence has. There's Trevor Steedman. There we go. A link to. So this bit's still at Shepperton. That wouldn't have occurred to me, because those guards are only on OB, and this would have intended to be done on film. So you don't get but it actually looks great on videotape, because sometimes film makes now if that set had been made of worse material, as it were, it being shot on film would have covered up that embarrassment, and you'd have had lovely sort of post dubbing and to clunk the sound effects, but actually didn't need it, because it's all great. So actually, maybe that airlock bit isn't at Shepperton. Maybe that's somewhere else. That's where the water tank is. I don't know. Do you know what? I don't know. I've just told you loads about an airlock. You can look it up. I'll put a subtitle. I'll say something afterwards. I think I've got a feeling this is on location somewhere, and this is a real airlock. I don't think this is a set. But I could be wrong, but I'm committed now, and I'm not rewinding. Yeah, I think the water stuff, the hydroponic stuff, was at Shepperton, and that airlock is somewhere else. I certainly know the water that Davison had to swim in was really cold. So, and of course, the Doctor didn't want. Gosh, her makeup is. Oh, yeah, the makeup is what Jonny Morris said. It's quite rainbowy. She looks a bit like Kronos, actually, having been in The Time Monster herself. Ingrid Pitt, Hammer Star, returning to Doctor Who from the Pertwee era. That was a lovely bathing of light in the Sea Devils. I'm niggled about that airlock. It's going to annoy me. I try to get things right. But actually, that wasn't the task I set myself with this. It was to watch this and enjoy it, not be a perfect oracle. So I've got to stop. But you know what you're like, Doctor Who fans. The other thing about guards in this is that we have to play Spot the Paroli, because Paroli is played by James Coombs, another actor who appeared at the Ludlow Festival. This has so many... Ludlow is a small market town which I was brought up 10 miles outside of, but every year they have a Shakespeare play in the castle. They don't anymore, but it was an open-air Shakespeare, and the visiting company was always professional actors doing a Shakespeare. And my brother was one of the princes in the tower, and Richard III was Edward Woodward. That's the sort of casts they were getting. And so then when I came of age and it was my turn, I did Merchant of Venice with James Ellis, and then I carried on. And so Vincent Brimble, Tarpock, was in As You Like It with Sylvester McCoy as Touchstone, John Gordon Sinclair as Orlando, and then Skibbus and Tarpock, and then Vincent came back and was in loads of them, including he did an Othello in which he played Lodovico with Colin McFarlane from Under the Lake, and an actor called John Darrell playing Roderigo, who said, "Oh, yeah, my brother designed Doctor Who a lot in the 80s. I said, "Darrell? There's not a designer called Darrell." He said, "Oh, no, he's called Tony Burrows." Which is Tony Burrow, so I don't know why I called him Burrows either. So there's something going on with the nose. He said, "Yeah, my brother's Tony Burrows, who's the designer." And Tony Burrow, there's a picture of him in the Radio Times 20th anniversary special, and he went on to design films, but he's never been interviewed by the DVD and Blu-ray range. But I'm assuming he's still about, so I don't know quite what's happened there. And John was a wonderful, eccentric, proper old character actor, fruity. But I never got to meet his brother. I worked with John a couple of times. But so Ludlow Festival, which was my, the first place I got a whiff of the grease paint. And any actor that had been in Doctor Who, I made a beeline for, and they were very, very, very kind. And Vincent Ribble and James Coombs had been in Ludlow Festival, who plays Paroli, before I was old enough, but he was in The Tempest, and Prospero was Bernard Breslaw from the Ice Warriors. Caliban was Frank Windsor from the King's Demons and Ghostlight, or they hadn't been in Ghostlight then. I don't think he'd been in King's Demons then either. And Stefano and Trinculo was Sylvester McCoy and Jim McManus from The Invisible Enemy. So, it was a gold mine. It was always a gold mine for Doctor Who actors, and I'd occasionally get their autographs, and it made me very happy. But James Coombs, you were hard-pressed to spot in this. He was the voice of Sentinel-7 in Episode 1. And he's basically any guard that says anything. And they all have the all-encompassing name of Paroli. I might have made this up, but I think he dies about 3 times. But basically, if there's a guard with a line, it's Paroli. James Coombs, whose main claim to fame, apart from that, he was going to be the voice of the Krags in Sharda. Missed out on that, so Pennant Roberts gives him a job. That's nice. That's his voice. That's James Coombs' voice. He's the milk tray man. He's a very handsome, good-looking. He's now grey. No, that's not a pejorative term for anybody that's not watching the video version. I'm as grey as you like, and James Coombs has more on top than I. but he's a very handsome James Bondy sort of looking actor. But yeah, he was going to be in Sharda, but he's in this. But as sort of random talky god. Mark Strickson does not get enough credit. He's a really interesting actor. He's a really pesky actor. He has a really sort of dirty energy about him. He's got a sort of spiteful vibe going on, but he's not afraid to sort of mix it up, and he's very good at looking behind him when he's musing about catching the camera. But the way he delivers lines is really interesting. He always keeps it fresh, and I think the companions have such a tricky job a lot of the time in all Who, but in 80s Who, and I think he's a fascinating, very watchable performer. One of the female sea base guards is bald, which I always liked. I always thought it was a little bit of there's a little bit of Persis Kambata from Star Trek: The Motion Picture about it, about that look. Although I'm looking now, I'm wondering if I've imagined that and they've just got their hair scraped back. I'm sure there's one lady who's bald, or if not, she's just appeared bald to me in the past few decades. This is great, Davison. He's got a bite to him there. I wouldn't if I were you. Yeah, that wet vet sobriquet is incorrect. He's got guts, Davison. He would be useful in a fight. He just doesn't always, deploy the piss and vinegar. Tara Ward here playing Preston. She was married to Ray Lunnan, who's in Frontier in Space. There's James Coombs. There we go. Spot the Paroli. It's the Where's Wally. That's your game for Warriors of the Deep. Where's Wally is Spot the Paroli. It's the same thing. Tara Ward, lovely woman. She writes sort of self-help books now and is a very earthy, spiritual, crystal-y lady who was married to Ray Lunnan from Harry's Game and Frontier in Space and the Sandbaggers. Lovely actor, Ray. Brilliant bit, the Doctor showing his trust by going, I'll give you my gun. And that, how better to get them to trust you under these extreme circumstances they're about to find themselves. They sort of go, well, this guy's a bit weird, but he's done that thing. And that plants a seed in Vorshak's head of going, all right, because Vorshak's not a fool. That's a very funny bit where Turlo gets to do I was right all along, and the incidental music goes, I think it's a bit on the nose, but I quite like it. I think that oh no, because they're inside the submarine, aren't they? So that's like the eyes of the submarine. So I was going to say I think I'd have preferred this to be a bit slimier and more organic. I still think I probably would, although I do like the submarine from the outside. It's non-alcoholic. Listeners, I've just poured my drink down my cravat. Oh God. I'm a rep actor waiting to happen. If only I'd been bought 40 years earlier, I could have always spilt lager down my cravat. It's non-alcoholic, so I don't even have that excuse. Is one of those bald, or is it all just hair scraped back? Oh, and Karina, I loved Karina when this was on. She was a character I really latched onto. She's not as prominent as she has the lovely bits with Maddox, but she's not as prominent as she was when I was a young man. You know, she was the nice one, Karina. She was the friendly one. You sort of really bought into her. He's really on the nose here, Davison, and I have a grudging admiration for Tom Adams as Vorshak, because it is a very chiseled performance, I mean, what some could say chiseled out of mahogany, but he has a kind of stoical 50s undemonstrativeness about him that he's sort of acting like he's in a B movie, and he was, I mean, he was a really interesting. He had an interesting career, Tom Adams, because he was in that James Bond spoof. He was a bit of a movie star in the 60s, and he's in The Great Escape. And then he'd done a series called Strike It Rich, so I knew him when he was on this. He was known to us as an actor. You know, it was like Tom Adams. You know, he's in it. That was impressive. And then he later went on to advertise sofas forever. There's if you're not from the UK listening to this, there's a sofa company called DFS who never don't have a sale. That's the joke. And he always did the DFS sale. But then there were other programs where he spoofed that DFS guy image. And he also, you know, he carried on doing acting roles in Casualty and things like that, you know, guest parts in things. But I think he never quite shook off the, you know, he committed to being the DFS guy, and that made him a slightly sort of cheesy presence on our screens, which, as I say, good for him. He sort of sent up. But for somebody who had he was a guy that people, you know, he could have been a Bond. He could have been a one of those sort of smooth British stars, and he did have some of that kind of stuff going on in the 60s. But I know somebody who worked with him in the 80s who said he seemed very disappointed. I interviewed him, I have to say, for a series of DVDs, and I found him very relaxed, very casual about the whole thing, didn't take any of it seriously, perfectly happy, and quite a jolly fellow. And he died not long after that. I was quite surprised. But this sea-based stuff is great. You know that we are in a place locked up with guards. Well, yes, of course, and you know the two power blocks. They don't name them, but in 1983, 84, you know, Russia and America were pointing at each other with nuclear missiles. You know, their fingers were made of warheads. That's Paroli talking there. He's is that him in the background as well? Is he everywhere? It didn't strike me as a kill him. Yeah, that's it. And Davison's like, oh yeah, cheers. He can be quite terse when dealing with authority figures, Davison. He's petulant is the wrong word, but he's no, that's not Paroli. Why didn't Paroli get to say no, ma'am? Probably because he's here. No, yeah, because he's here saying no, sir. He can't be. I mean, he's a man of many talents, but he can't be at two airlocks at once. And it's interesting because there's actually been... I mean, the Sea Devils and Silurians, those scenes in the submarine are a bit sort of ploddingly done. And yeah, I've talked about the atmosphere that you could have in this base that doesn't. But there's nothing that's setting this out as... This had a terrible reputation for many years. And you know, it was definitely not loved amongst anybody that I spoke to in the late 80s, early 90s, if ever I spoke to anybody about any Doctor Who fans, you know. I don't think it looks any worse than a lot of what was around at the time, and as I say, it has a kind of B-movie charm about it that utterly wins me over. If this was a Sunday afternoon and I just wanted to chill out and watch an action adventure, Doctor Who doing action adventure, which it sometimes chooses to do, and I'd seen Earthshock recently and some of them Resurrection of the Daleks recently. This is certainly Eric Saywood's cup of tea, isn't it? I believe is that a bald lady? Oh no, maybe not. Maybe I imagine the bald lady and it's just their hair scraped back. Eric Saywood killed off Vorshak and Preston, who don't die in Johnny Byrne's script, because Eric Saywood, thinks killing people is dramatic, and I don't think he's incorrect. And as a kid, his sort of blood and thunder and violence was what I wanted. I didn't want philosophical conversations on a spaceship or historical pageantry. I wanted tough talking people getting killed. But I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I did. And, the fact that this has the morality element to it, are we doing the right thing? Do I have the right, and it's not, there should have been another way, all of that is to its credit. That now, obviously, the Merca is armed with some sort of electric charge that reduces metal doors to sponge. That is right, because the Merca was delivered early. Matt Irvin, bless him, he was on Swap. He was the visual effects guy who did this. He was the face of BBC visual effects. He was like the visual effects guy who was always on Swap Shop, the Saturday morning show, and he was very much the ambassador for the visual effects department. And I wrote to the visual effects department because I was trying to get hold of Jack Kine and Bernard Wilkie, its founders, because I was wanting to write a book about Quatermass, which I'm still doing, but this was in 1989, so I was 15. Well, I can't knock a guy for trying. And instead of just forwarding my letter, Matt Irvin rang me up and said, "Oh, well, I can tell you a bit about Quatermass, and yes, we're going to forward the letters as well." So I got back from school and had a chat with Matt Irvin, the visual effects guy from Swap Shop. But he mentioned, and I said, "Oh, because I know your name from Doctor Who, of course." He said, "Yeah, I'm sort of done with that now, because it's horrible the way she smiles because she thinks he's going to be nice to her. And Martin Neal does this brilliantly. He doesn't want to strangle her. That's really well done from him. He's being forced to strangle her, but he's not being wimpy about it either. There's he's acting against his will, and his brain is saying one thing and his face is saying another. Well done, Martin Neal. Poor old Karina. She didn't make as much of an impact on me subsequently, but when I first watched this, that was really sad. So Matt Irvin, who designed the Merca, he was on another job. So there was a delay, and then the studio was brought forward, wasn't it, because the election was coming up or something. So this story was compromised by its production schedule, and I know it adversely affected Matt's relationship with Doctor Who, which is a shame because he's a legend and the only man in the universe that can get away with a mullet. He's great, Matt Irvin, and he's always been very helpful, subsequently with DVDs and things like that. But he rang me, a 15-year-old school kid, a dreamer, and spoke to me very, very nicely, and without it seeming like I was getting a royal visit, which in my house, in the middle of nowhere, as a 15-year-old schoolboy who just got back from school, it really was. Salute you, Matt Irvin, even though you're not happy with the Merca and the fact that it was still covered in green paint. It's actually a decent, from the sort of neck up, it's decent. It's very ambitious, and the story doesn't really need it. But actually, the Sea Devils and the Silurians don't move any quicker. That's good stoical acting there from Nigel Humphrey Bewlett going, "I'm doing this. I'm going to have to do it." I remember liking Bewlett at the time. I'm glad he survives. The only one. Braveheart, that thing's going to kill us. See, I don't think... that's not actually too bad, the old Merca. Is it? I think it's because of the distance. There were certainly shortcomings to this when I watched it when I was 10. I remember me and my friend Ollie were quite... We loved Doctor Who, but we were quite... that hasn't quite worked, has it? And we thought the Merca was a bit naff. It's funny, with a bit of distance of time, I actually don't think it looks... this looks any better or worse than anything that's around it. And I think some things have dated okay. But again, that might be because I've come into this with a positive attitude. Who knows? And I've got various personal connections. There's been a lot of those in this commentary. I'm very sorry about that. What facts did you learn from that? That Toby met some people vaguely related to some of these people. Sorry. What do I like about episode 2 of, or more exactly, what does Jonny Morris like about episode 2 of Warriors of the Deep? Because it's sort of that I've got to guess what he might choose. I like the scene where the Doctor gains Vorshak's guarded trust. He breaks the impasse when everyone's pointing guns at each other by going, "Have my gun, trust me." And Davison, because he's had the thing on his hair slightly sweaty, and his eyes and his face is a bit flushed, so his eyes sort of pop out a little bit more. So he's looking a bit sort of action hero-y. But yeah, the Doctor giving the gun to Vorshak. That scene. What has Jonathan said?
My best thing about episode 2 is that it's the first time that the Doctor is allowed to be funny. When he puts on the guy's hazard suit and says, "What have you been eating?"
I was going to mention that. I was talking through it because that's a bit that Davison added. And I remember, when I was putting the DVD in, I thought, I will need to say something about that because I sort of believe it. I don't know if I like it or not because I'm quite the things that prick the senses sometimes make me quite uncomfortable, and body odor and all of that sort of thing. I'm very, very conscious of that sort of thing. So I'm not sure I like the joke. I don't like sort of jokes that have viscera and bodily fluids and smells and things in them, and yet it is quite a neat little gag. It's quite a neat little gag. So and I appreciate, and it was added by Davison because John Nathan Turner didn't always let him get away with the jokes he wanted to stick in, and he got away with that one. So I think I like it, even though it's not to my taste. I don't like it, but I appreciate the fact that it's there for other people who do, and I appreciate that the leading actor brought that in. But I think mine's better with the handing the gun over, because I'm a very serious person, and jokes about smells are silly. Right. Come and join me for episode 3. Between episode 2 and episode 3, I'm going to relax and put my feet up and check that bloody airlock. Oh, Martin Neal was not in Secret Army. That niggled me. It's because Nitsa Saul was in Kessler. He was in Freewheelers though with Wendy Padbury. Anyway, yes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to look at the airlock. I hope when I get back to you, I haven't got the bends. I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find. Well, I wasn't going to let this go, was I? And I haven't. So it was done as OB at the Royal Engineers Diving Establishment, Macmullen Barracks, Marchwood, Hampshire. The Doctor in the hydro tank, the Doctor finding the escape route, and the Doctor in the service airlock, all from episode 2, were done as an OB shoot on the 27th of the 6th, 1983. And in fact, the stuff in the cooling chamber and even all the Silurian stuff was also done as an OB unit at Shepperton Studios. So rather than being filmed at Ealing as that stuff normally would be done, that sort of stuff was done at Shepperton and on videotape, which is why it doesn't have that sort of filmic look. But yeah, the bit that was really vexing me was whether the hydro tank and all the underwater stuff with the Doctor was done separately, and it was. It had its own day, 27th of the 6th, 1983. Oh, and Trevor Steedman, who's the extra I noticed, who's Private Witzbowski from Aliens, he is in that OB shoot, but he's also in the studio for episodes 1 and 3, so you can spot him there. I think you'll find. Well, I have found, and now you've found too, unless you'd already found, in which case you could have told me that I think I should find, which I have. So Find off. Well, I don't know about you, but my base is feeling well and truly besieged. So let's see if I can do anything about that as we open the sponge doors to herald in episode 3 of Warriors of the Deep in 3, 2, 1, play. Not the smoothest entrance imaginable. I'm sorry about that, but a not very effective entrance is probably an appropriate way to herald Part 3 of Warriors of the Deep, which, apart from the Merca, I don't. It's difficult to know what the actors could have done with that, and as I say, there's this story as a whole. There are no sort of performances that make you go, "Oh yeah, they're doing some really subtle characterization there." Everyone's playing a sort of different variation of stoical base person, and then there's bad base person and bad foreign base person. But I kind of like that. We don't have anybody crying because their daughter's at home, or arguing because they're a couple who are getting divorced, and one of them sacrifices himself to save the other. All of which I sort of like and go for, but I quite like the fact that these are all just very serious people doing their job, and it's a very sort of straightforward and unshowy sort of a approach to doing this sort of thing, which I'm not explained very well, but I just quite like. I like the look that Bulick shoots Turlo there. This is terribly serious, and there's nothing I can do about it, But yeah, and of course the Merca, famously, is Dobbin from Rent-A-Ghost. Again, those of you that are not 100 years old or from the United Kingdom, like what I is, Rent-A-Ghost was a funny children's programme about some ghosts represented by a shabby agency owned by the war chief. And they had a pantomime horse that was operated by John Asquith and William Perry. John Asquith is one of the dancers in Black Orchid. William Perry is who only died a couple of years ago. He was a really interesting guy. He was a butterfly collector, but he's also one of the dim caretakers in Paradise Towers. He's the one without the beard when the Doctor does the outwitting them scene with the rule book. That's William Perry, and he's lovely. You could watch his entire performance. In fact, he will get the Paroli treatment when I come to do Paradise Towers for this, which nobody has nominated yet. In fact, there's currently an embargo on the McCoys, because I will spread them out evenly, but a lot of people are choosing the McCoys. He is a genuinely sort of psychotic kind of guy, Turlo, which is so refreshing. I think the idea of introducing somebody who rather than being a stowaway, somebody that wants to kill the Doctor, I think is a neat move. Yes, I'm not quite sure about to Tegan and the Doctor go. Yeah, we'll go. You can hold them off, Sergeant. So that's not Paroli, even though he did get a line. There's a few people who get a yes sir and a yes ma'am, but Paroli gets most of the lines. The ones that are more than the words yes sir and ma'am. He's got a whole bit about a disc in this episode that we've got to look forward to. It's almost like a monologue. This is as Saturday tea time stuff goes. This is sort of good, hard sci-fi. I'm assuming that's a wig that Ingrid Pitt has on. Oh, yes, by the way, people who've been following this chronologically, the airlock in episode 2 is a genuine airlock. I was correct. Still got it. Now, one of these extras one of the sea base crew is played by Xiao Yung from Battlefield. There's a lady here who does. None of these guys die particularly well, but there's a lady who lowers herself to the ground. I mean, I wonder if in editing you might have gone, should we not have that bit where the extras don't die very well? But one of them is one of the sea base. I couldn't quite make out if she was one of those 4, because I think there are 5. Might be just before. Is Xiao Yung from Battlefield, when she was a supporting artiste rather than a featured actress. Now it's interesting how the light now dictates who speaks. I love the Silurian voices in Doctor Who and the Silurians. I love the Silurian designs in Doctor Who and the Silurians. I think the turtle sort of shell carapace thing going on there is a logical extension of the Silurian design. I kind of buy it. The electronic voices maybe suggest that they've got a bit of sort of, maybe that shell thing is some sort of augmentation, a bit like, you know, the Ice Warriors, where does the armour begin and the armour end and the skin begin? But I really did like Peter Holliday's "We Are the Silurians." I really like those voices because they're so... That's... Paroli is at the end of that orange microphone. Paroli is radioing in to Vorshak. He's the one that's running around the whole thing going, I'll tell the commander what's going on. He's the relay guy. But I think the Silurian designs are decent, but they are quite cumbersome. They do all seem to move. So I love the way that Tom Adams does this scene, because that kind of, I want your help when I ask for it, and have you shot? I like the sort of suppressed anger that he's got, and kill him if he gives me any trouble, and he's and he said last episode, didn't he, if he gives any trouble, kill him. And I buy it, that, and he's not sort of sadistic base commander, he's not base commander on the edge, he's just, I've got a job to do and it's a tough job and I haven't got time to mess around, and Tom Adams is the perfect actor for that. Now, I mean, I think these days these Sea Devils would be done for cultural appropriation, because there's something sort of, and I think it was even said at the time, you know, they are inspired by samurais, because they're very close, aren't they? And I think this is where perhaps Pennant Roberts' reputation as a director perhaps comes from, is that there's not, it's I'm sure that was envisaged as a sort of, you know, throw some barrels down, everybody get behind cover, and there's instead of sort of stand literally 3 feet away from each other, one casualty, and some very lopsided Sea Devils sort of slowly walking towards the heroes, who very slowly back out. And I can imagine if I'd written that scene, he's got gaffer tape. This Sea Devil, who's the close-up on his bottom that we have, his costume has been gaffer taped. I assume that's sea plankton that has been used as a field dressing. Yes, that's what it is. But poor old so Turlo's had that wah 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 music for "I Told You So," and now he's got the wah wah wah, as in now you've got to hold the bulkhead. Now that's Paroli's voice, but I don't think it was Paroli calling in. I haven't been paying full attention. You can have hours of fun pairing up whether the voice of Paroli we've got is actually being said by Paroli or by some fake Paroli, some Paroli intruder. I got some tech unit. Yes, all right. You could. Turlo gave a look there. He could have had another wah wah wah. it's almost like Turlough's ripostes are given a musical refrain that could then herald the beginning of there's the gaffer tape of Grange Hill. But this is tense. This is tense stuff. It's a shame about that battle scene. I think, given all day, there's James Coombs. Given all day, loads of cameras, you could make that really work. But in continuous shooting in a multi-camera, it's a bit beyond Pennant Roberts. I suspect some other directors could have done better, but I because of course, whilst the Sea Devils are attacking, these two bad guys are free to sort of put their plan into operation. Poor old Karina has been wiped out. Oh yeah, Tegan's hurt her leg, hasn't she? Because she got landed on by the sponge door. But as I was 10, so I'd not had a chance to see the Silurians in the Sea Devils. I remember wondering why the third eye that I must have read about in the book of Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters, which in their original story, the third eye for the Silurians is like a Swiss Army eye. It opens doors, it kills people, it does all sorts of things, and that sort of idea that it's a sort of organic psychic force. I mean, it's, as I say it out loud, actually the third eye being able to open doors and kill people is actually just as silly as an idea as it flashing when to indicate which one's speaking for the viewers at home. But I think I prefer the third eye from Doctor Who and the Silurians just because it seems to it behaves a bit more like an eye because eyes can open doors rather than flash when you speak. As I say it, I'm not convincing myself, but I prefer the original third eye, and that might just be because when I was 10, old was good, new was a disappointment, and I've tried to grow out of that, and it's a continuing struggle as a Doctor Who fan, which is why I probably like this more now than I did at the time, because old is good. And it's weird, some of my favourite stories are from New Who, but I think it took me ages to admit that an adventure from the new series could ever overtake anything from my childhood. And this is one of the I mentioned this in Moths Ate by Doctor Who Scarf. My one-man show had a bit about this, and Tara Ward came to see it at the West End, and I'd forgotten, and I did this bit, and she booed it. I said about Ingrid Pitt karate kicking a lopsided sea monster. I think she was quite chuffed that I'd mentioned Warriors of the Deep. And yeah, she and Ray came to see the show. And they know Vincent Brimble as well. Right, this is where Paroli really gets his moment to shine. 43Y, yes, that's something to do with the disc, but it means that he gets. We don't actually know what that means, but we just know it means that she's been up to no good. I think perhaps that could have been clearer in the storytelling, but it's fine. It gives Paroli a line. I am happy, but yeah, it's one of the great. I know I'm supposed to be accentuating the positive, and it's not to be a kind of arch, yeah, it's so good because it's bad. Because I didn't love Doctor Who because it was bad. I loved Doctor Who because it was great and it thrilled me. But even as a 10-year-old young pup, Ingrid Pitt karate kicking a lopsided sea monster was not a moment that thrilled me. But now, yes, Paroli, give it all you've got. They killed Dr. Solow. That was 2 sentences. All right, and have some chocolate, and give a lady some chocolates on the way. Yes, again for listeners of a certain age and from different climes, the Milk Tray Man was an advert. He was a black polo necked clad diver off of cliffs and swimmer undersea to deliver to a mysterious lady a box of. I remember thinking when that was on that laser had hit Turlough and nobody had reacted. It's supposed to suggest that it hits the panel behind him, but the depth of field is not suggested by where the lasers hit. The milk tray man, yes, goes to great lengths and shows great athleticism, and he's a bit of a sort of James Bondy type of guy to deliver some very cheap and simple. I mean, if you go to that effort, you'd at least get Hotel du Chocolat, or even an assorted box of Lindt. But no, milk tray with its fudge and its strawberries. They were, when I was a kid, they were as sophisticated as you got. You know, we were happy with an orange cream, and a coffee cream was for dodgy people. But everything else, fudge and a coconut and an orange cream, that was the whole gamut of flavours. Now this is, you can see that Iktar here is untucked. I think all the Silurians are untucked here. Yeah, look at that. But and I mean, the camera's on it. It's extraordinary. You can see that's I have to say, I don't think I noticed at the time. They have to walk very slowly. It's the 43Y disc. It's now, that's what I call treachery, 43Y. I like Ian McCulloch, and I didn't really know who he was. Oh, no, he's in an episode of Bergerac, I think after this. I certainly saw a peat of it down the line, where he's an Australian diver. Bernard Archer's in that episode of Bergerac as well, and Gilbert Wynne from the Crotons. Nicholas Chagrin from Vengeance on Varos. Anyway, but he's great at villainy. But of course, he was known for being a Terry Nation hero. He was in Survivors, which I had not seen at this point, and he's fantastic as Greg Preston, the pragmatic, terse, gutsy, very realistic man. Fighting the apocalypse with a double-barrel shotgun and an Aaron jumper and a terse look. But I didn't know him from that at the time, and he's got a very sort of good harsh voice. And I got really into Survivors when I saw it about 10 years after this, and collected it on video, and he's great as Greg Preston. I love the way the Merca dies. What William Perry, who is front end of Merca, does with his hands there shows, because they didn't have much time to rehearse with this at all, shows what perhaps they could have done with a bit more time and a finished prop. Because I think that little sort of hand thing he does in Death is really effective, really works. It's a neat touch, and it puts a light to the fact that the Merca is an utter disaster. The Merca's been destroyed. Oh, yes, and Skibbus, who's the other... So, Skibbus, who's the second companion, the second Silurian, is Stuart Blake, who's just been in Doctor Who, because he's in the Five Doctors, and he's the commander who shoots the Castellan. He goes, he was armed and trying to escape. So, he must have been popular around that time. 2 stories in a row. Not many people have done 2 stories in a row as guest actors. There's the odd one. Karina's been murdered off-screen, and I found her in a cupboard, so we don't have to pay her for the episode, which shows excellent use of resources. Actors get paid so little nowadays, you could probably have her in it and nobody'd notice. They'd probably forget to pay you anyway. But in those days, they at least went, no, we'll write you out. We'll write you out cleverly. We'll contrive a way where we can make your death have impact, but not show it practically, in order to make the books, in order to make fiscal sense. I trusted you, Nielsen. I do like. I do sometimes walk around the house pretending to be Tom Adams. I think that kind of solid acting has gone out of fashion, and I'm not sure it shouldn't come back in certain roles. I love the Doctor's dismissiveness of our petty feuds is a good word. You know, the Doctor has travelled the whole of time and space. Our sort of little grabs for power and land and nationalism are so beneath this guy who's seen everything the universe has to offer, and the Doctor's contemptuous of it. Even the incorrectly sobriqueted wet vet, as I say, it gives a lie to that. Well done, Maddox. Maddox is going to have a go. Yeah, and I like the laser pistols as well. I think they're a good design. They're not, sometimes laser pistols can be a bit chunky and a bit silly looking. I think these are a really good design. That must be Matt Irvin. It's probably made out of an Airfix aeroplane. She dies. I like the way he pulls her up there. I don't know why he hit the Doctor with his elbow and twat him, but there we go. Now I think Paroli goes through a door and gets killed here. Yeah, I think this is the end of Paroli. Oh, Paroli! He could have at least gone, Mother. They have been contracted for episode 4. Keep them alive. What about Paroli? There were loads of him anyway, at least 4. There's probably another one somewhere. Paroli is not in episode 4, so that's the end of him, sadly. But hang on, that was Paroli just saying that. Where are Tolo and dead or captured? But I'll say dead because then that's a bit more dramatic. So we just saw Paroli die, and then so there is another Paroli somewhere on the base. There is a lone Paroli, unnecessarily suggesting that somebody is dead before then counteracting that with but I don't know for sure, or captured. So I have hope that the 5th Saving Private Paroli, the 5th Paroli brother, is out there somewhere, and Tom Hanks has been dispatched to go and rescue him and say, and next time you radio in, say, we're not sure, there's a possibility they're dead, but they could have been captured. Don't say dead. Soft sell it. Keep morale up. And also, your brothers are all dead. Come and hide with me. Be still. That's a very Eric Saywood line, isn't it? Be still, woman. You know, most people would say stop moving. Yes, I will say be still. Are you sure? Oh, you must think me a fool. Oh, look, you can see green paint on his sleeve because the murk is still wet. But it is from the sea. It's slime. It's not paint. It's slime. But yeah, and I bought Nielsen as a villain. He was totally villainous for me. And there's something about having your hair slicked back as well. Baddies do that. Yeah, nobody else, I think, has the slick back hair. So that was a clue. Lovely piece of music here. Terrible shots, aren't they? They have to get really close, and they shoot once. I mean, he's got an excuse. He's been blinded. But, I mean, you get that close, you may as well. Your turn. I like the fact that the Sea Devil voices are the original Sea Devil voices because they are effective. That sort of lizard-like thing, even though they're sea creatures, but that works for me, and it's a unique voice in Doctor Who because we've had many whispering monsters, but that kind of staccato whisper is I like that. Paroli, that's the last time. Paroli, I suit you, Paroli. So Vincent only gets bottom billing, I think, in the next episode. Because Salvix moves up a bit. Oh, Salvix is played by Christopher Farries, whose nephew, David, was at university a couple of years below me. So he went, oh yeah, my uncle was in Doctor Who. And I went, Farries? Is it Christopher Farries? He went, how do you know that? So, yeah, I'm presuming I live next door to Karina and Bulick, who are married. Because this story seems to keep... I seem to keep bumping into people who've got some weird connection with it. So, what did... I'll pause. It's actually there. It doesn't matter for the listener. I've put the the DVD player somewhere much more convenient to press pause so I don't lag into the next episode. And I'm pointing to everywhere that it isn't. Anyway, what is my favourite thing about episode 3? It's difficult. I like all the Bates Under Siege stuff. I like the sort of that's the stoical 50s B movie kind of acting, but there is a sort of insult thrown in there, and I don't mean there to be, but it is it is slightly criticizing the acting and yet saying it's sort of appropriate for the piece, which is odd, and I don't quite know how it works. But I can enjoy the acting in some 50s stuff, but acknowledge that you wouldn't get away with acting like that today. What is my favourite thing about episode 3 of Warriors of the Deep? And I can't say Paroli, because that would be very, very bad indeed. I think I can't say the karate. Can I? Can I say the... No, because that's celebrating something that's objectively not very good. I think I will give the nod to Martin Neal as Maddox, who I think played a very difficult part very well. He could have been really whingy and unlikable. And yet he always had that sort of layer of resentment underneath. The manipulation was not easy, and it took its toll. And I totally bought all of that. I totally bought that he'd been through a sort of mental kickback from that took its toll, and eventually he had that moment where he, finally at the end went, I'm gonna kill you next time, son. Just do it. So that, with a side order of there's still a Paroli out there, still alive. But yeah, Martin Neal and what he does with Maddox is my thing for episode 3. What's Jonny Morris's?
My best thing about episode 3 is Nilsson's incredibly small gun. It's so dinky. My best thing about episode...
Oh, that's it. Well, I did comment on the guns. I think it's a very effective gun, because I'm sure it'll happen when I get to Kinder. Kinder is one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time, but Simon Rouse has a giant Hoover of a laser gun, and it serves to slightly undermine one of the best episode endings in the show's history. And you go, I'd love to show that to somebody if I could stand in front of the gun, the vacuum cleaner gun. Anyway, and I think I know, and Matt Irvin, legend, who I'm sure is responsible. But I chose Martin Neal, who was wielding the gun. Okay. Jonny and I were in accord there, but I didn't, in the end, didn't go for that thing, even though I'd highlighted it. But that's okay. We're thinking along the same lines. I'm very much enjoying Warriors of the Deep. I wish I'd shut up and I could just sit and watch it. But that's not what this is for. Episode 4, it's your turn. Next. Well, welcome back. We've got to bring Warriors of the Deep to a conclusion, and I'm afraid there's no other way but to press play in 3, 2, 1. I'm eating a nut. It's late. I need a bit of sustenance. Welcome. I hope you're well. Some of you are watching this. Some of you are listening. If you're a listener and you don't know about the watch, these episodes are all available on YouTube. So if you want to delve behind the scenes and see what the colour of the sofa I'm sitting on is, and whether I'm wearing any trousers... actually, you can't even tell in the video if I'm wearing any trousers. Of course I'm not. No, I'm wearing trousers. You were a fool to be in the recap, Nielsen, because you won't get a credit on this episode because it all counts as last week's. even though you're in this as a corpse, I'd have had a word with my agent and gone, strictly speaking, that's an appearance. But he's not credited on this episode. I remember my housemate saying they didn't understand why he didn't cover his eyes properly, but I think that's the camera getting underneath and showing that he's been blinded. I think they were being a bit... I was with drama students. They tend to... It shocked me how much drama students look for faults in things as a kid, as a teenager, as a student. Whereas I always sort of went into things on the side of the program makers. I wasn't there to put them to the test or challenge them or find flaws in what they were doing, because it's what I wanted to be doing. But I was sort of deferent to the people that were doing it because they were where I aspired to be. I remember it being quite an eye-opener. Well, my contemporaries thought most of what we saw was rubbish. That they could do better. Perhaps that's always held me back. My respect for other people. No, I've done okay. And a lot of my contemporaries are doing other things. And a lot have done very, very well. So... And I don't think any of those things are dictated by our respective attitudes towards 1984 television. So no parallel should be drawn. Vincent Brimble as Tarpock. I've mentioned a lot. But he was an actor that I liked because he was Mr. Glover in Grange Hill, who was a bit mean. He wasn't a teacher, he was a governor. Georgie Glover's dad. And I'd seen him a few other things, and I'd been surprised... then to discover, I'd seen him in a Doctor Who, but of course, because you can't see him. And he was an actor that was in a lot at that time. And I think he was, as I say, it was a bit last minute, and he was doing somebody a favour. Because he's not really an actor that you would stick under latex. And he's had a great career since RSC. He's done loads and loads of telly, still working to this day. I think he's been in contention for a couple of things in newer Who as well, which would be lovely to see, because he's a very handsome fellow. He's a very nice guy, and he's a good actor. Keeps still working, as is his wife, Janet Spencer-Turner, who's a lovely actress. And their daughter, Charlotte Brimble, is an actor. And Nick Brimble, Vincent's brother, was Little John in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And his twin brother, Ian, was also an actor, but he's retired now. So they're quite a family. And as I say, he's a lovely, lovely man with a very attractive manner to him, and a good actor. Done loads of adverts because he's got sort of good. He must be 70 now, Vincent. But no, nice actor. Oh, and I went to see Louise Jameson in Hamlet. And drop in on her because she was doing Hamlet not far from where my mum lives, and Vincent was playing the ghost in that. So it's a funny old world. Whereas Norman Comer, who plays Ictor is a massive part. And he'd been a regular in one of the police series, Softy maybe, and he's still around, but he's never done an interview. I don't think he's ever answered a letter, bar maybe signing a picture. So maybe he doesn't think Ictar is his finest hour. I have a picture of him. I know what he looks like, but it's great. I actually think he's really good as Ictar. It's a decent part. He's a chatty monsters. Don't always work. They work best when they're sort of links or ones where you can get a sort of performance and a facial expression. And poor old Ictar is, you don't get any eye or mouth movement much, really. Not like the John Friedlander half masks. Oh, they will die in a sea of their own blood. I remember Gary Russell says Ictar cheerfully or something in his review. And I think he said... I seem to recall reading later that he'd said, we had to be positive, and I said, there's no way that Warriors of the Deep will ever be considered a classic, and they edited that down to say Warriors of the Deep is a classic, because the review was slightly sarky about it. I remember him saying how cheerful was when he said Ictar said they'll die in a sea of their own blood. But yeah, he's behind the latex, and his voice has been treated, but he carries quite a lot of the dialogue, Ictar, and it's a decent role, and I think he does a decent job, all things considered. You'll get no help from me, Silurian. I love that. That's, you know, if you've got somebody saying that, you want it to be Tom Adams doing it. I like Tom Adams is present. And Davison is great. And of course, there was a question as to, you know, whether for me, even though I'd read the Cave Monsters, I hadn't seen the Silurians, and it's very different. But you know, for me, the fact that he referred to Iktar as the last of the Silurian triad, I was basically, yeah, that's the scientist from the Silurians. If you examine it too closely, it doesn't tie in at all. And I know there's been attempts now to have other adventures, you know, that breach that gap. But it's clearly the intention is to tie Iktar in with the adventure before, and with not all information being available. As a fan at the time, as a young fan, that was enough for me to go, yeah, okay, that's cool. That, you know, you've mentioned the Silurian triad. That's basically the three from the Silurians. The music is quite cheeky in this, isn't it? It gives it a lot of kind of, oh dear, what's going on here? Sort of asides, sort of cheeky asides from the music. It's like sort of noises off, sort of stage whispers. What's going on here? And you know, I think the reason that the Silurians and Sea Devils are creatures worth always bringing back is because they put us in our place, in the sense that to them we are vermin. And I think that's a really interesting driver for a story, because, you know, we're used to going, no, people invading our planet, we've got every right to defend ourselves. And then suddenly we're in the position where the people doing that have a greater call to that defense than we do. And that's such a brilliant idea. That the heart of that, where, you know, we're not even the invaders, because this is our planet in inverted commas. There's another bit of a wobble there. And I'm always one to say the sets don't wobble that much in Doctor Who. No, they don't, actually, any more than any other programme. Lazy journalism. Yeah, no, it really is. But I think I've said that before. Avail yourself of a show called Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf, which is still available in bargain bins everywhere. But no, that central idea that you know, I sort of, you know, if we're on the planet Uxarius or something, we're colonizing that. So, you know, us being invaders is a, you know, it's still a moral dilemma in a way, but it's a bit more cut and dried. Whereas this, it's not cut and dried, because we haven't invaded anywhere here, and yet we have basically built our civilization on the ruins of another one, and they just woke up. Bulett gets to be quite heroic in this. Oh yeah, the Doctor just walks out, doesn't he? I've forgotten about that. Big old set. But yes, I remember the review in Doctor Who magazine seemed to slightly take the mickey out of this. This story as a whole. And the Sea Devil, because they didn't like the Sea Devil string vests, so they went for this samurai thing, which, you know, when they do that with the Draconians in Frontier in Space, it works, but partially because they're a species that get a performance and have different characters. Apart from Sauvix, the Sea Devils of this are sort of grunts, and that was what Johnny Byrne wanted. He sort of saw them as sort of foot soldiers, with the Silurians being the sort of mouthpiece. But I think I prefer the string vest. I think it's a better showcase for the mask. I think the mask looks better. The head looks better, not with the hat on. A couple of dead Parolis there. No, it's not. Although they are decent costumes. They did, and the black color scheme is good. That's a great shot. I like that. The heads of the heads of the departing soldiers and Iktar in the background as he sends them off to kill the Doctor. That's a really nice shot, actually. So yeah, I was having sort of said I'm not sure about the samurai thing. I actually think they're decently done as a concept. Oh, and this, of course, yes. So the sync up, and that's a great idea. The idea that yes, you can't, you can't initiate a nuclear war without a specially trained person and without the brain syncing in with the computer. Which for years we were told. Actually, for years we were told this is a complete riff off of the Space 1999 episode, but it's not really. But that idea is quite good. The sort of element of human control of the ultimate nuclear thing that loomed so large in 1984, which was a year not named after anything particularly cheerful. What times we lived in. Have the Silurians got... I just noticed they've got sort of 2 fingers and they've got like a sort of double finger. This is great, this stuff, because, okay, so we've introduced the hexachroma and all us young dudes have gone, oh, that's a terrible plot thing, but actually, no, because the plot is, the moral dilemma is, we've had the means to defeat them all this time. Can we choose a better means? And of course we're gonna get we're gonna have a Sea Devil killed by the hexachromite, which means I don't think it's this one that gets the green goo, is it? I think it's when Sarvix dies he gets the green goo. Which I think the green goo... Oh, no, it's the green goo is there. There's a sort of money shot that's the green goo shot. I'm sure there's a pteroleptil that green goos. The Malice is sick green goo. I'm sure I've done another green goo as part of this, so I'm just trying to think of what stories I've watched. Oh, Khalid, he gets a bit of green goo that nearly kills somebody, the person underneath it. And this is why we spotted the hexachromite, so that Lieutenant Preston, Tara Ward, can go quite reasonably as far as she's concerned. They've killed loads of my mates. They're going to launch the nuclear codes. We've got a reason. We've got a way to kill them. Kill them like this. And it's the dilemma at the heart of Doctor Who. You've got to. We think of the Doctor as a man of peace and learning. So when does he decide actually that to preserve that I have to kill? But then of course all tyrants have used, well, I'm preserving what's good at the cost of all these lives, but it's worth it because of what's good. It depends what you decide is worth it, isn't it? And that depends what side you're on. Whoa. I do miss. And in the modern Silurians, I mean, I know they've gone for performance, and that's laudable. And I mean, in that story, you've got the Hungry Earth. You've got Neve McIntosh and Stephen Moore and Richard Hope. You've got 3 very good actors. You don't want to stick them behind puckered Siluri gobs, but I do miss the fact that they look like monsters rather than human beings. The human being mouth, nose, and eyes thing. And I think the third eye, because the third eye and the point of view in Doctor of the Silurians is a terrific and again weird thing, and they've got a funny sort of, they're a bit more sort of feral. They've got a funny sort of gait and that guttural voice. Tom Adams is stoically going through this. He was a big cricket fan, Tom Adams. In fact, I think he had an MCC tie on. I got the impression, did I see him smoke a cigar? But I don't know, but I got the impression he was a cigar smoker. Had a long brown coat. But yeah, he was a big cricket man. Yeah, look, they've got a thumb, 2 fingers, and then 2 fingers sort of stuck together. And very stubby fingers. Of course, yes, because today you'd probably, go for a bit of choreography with monsters and stuff. But in those days, they're encased in latex. They must have been absolutely drenched under studio lights. Oh, many a fine actor has suffered for the sake of Doctor Who. And so this is Salvik's Christopher Farries, who was supposed to be playing the megaphone man in Snake Dance, and ended up not doing so. So again, it's interesting how so many of these actors are sort of miss out on a part, like Robert Ashby, the Borad, who does the BBC Shakespeare instead of this, and then does the Borad a bit later. Christopher Farries misses out in Snake Dance, comes back to this a bit later, totally different director, but shows if people are around, if you're in their thoughts. Oh, go for it, Preston! No! Oh, they killed Preston, you swines! And Bulick comes to the rescue because Bulick's a hero. Ingrid Pitt was considered for Preston, and it's actually no smaller a part than Solar, really, and she'd have probably still got, she'd have still been considered a guest star, because all the parts are fairly decent sized in this. Preston would have just been slightly more Estonian, or I guess. Was she Estonian? Whatever, wherever Ingrid Pitt was from. Now, this story was also one of the last, is Toby's favourite morbid thing, the last to have no deceased cast members. Can't remember what order it was, but there was Frontios, there was, I could if I put my mind to it, Dragonfire and City of Death, I think were the last to have no deceased cast members. But then Ingrid Pitt died and Tom Adams died. But other than that, then clench your fist. I remember my friends laughing at that he was saying, I'm not going to be responsible, but I'll hold my hand out. But I think that's because you see the Sea Devil then grab his hand and make him do it. I think the Sea Devils aren't dexterous enough. Their fingers aren't nimble enough to force him to do it. So the actor had to sort of make a compromise. So, and I nonetheless admire Tom Adams' stoicism throughout this episode. So what was I talking about? Can't remember. And of course, yes, this becomes a sort of bloodbath. Everybody dies, which again makes this pretty grim stuff. But this is what I wanted as a kid. I wanted, seeing as we've had, I love Four to Doomsday now. I love Black Orchid. I love Kinder. But I found them all a bit sort of perplexing and quite slow as a kid. Whereas the ones like this, where people died and there was action and there were monsters, this was great stuff. Although this is quite confusing. Poor old Tom Adams manages to get a death scene that is quite the most indistinct death scene, I think, in the whole of the bar. Maybe Jacqueline Hill in Meglos, whose death scene is a catalogue of woes in terms of how necessary it isn't, and how well realised it isn't. But because Tom Adams has been so sort of chiselled throughout the whole thing, the fact that he barely reacts to something we don't really see isn't helped by the fact that he's had the same expression sort of throughout, wish I could remember what I was talking about. It's quite late now. I'm talking to you at 24 minutes past 1, because you see I do this when everyone in the house has gone to bed. And of course it's great. Yeah, it's this is where the Doctor steps into the breach and has to be heroic. And you know, Davison really makes us go through this. You really get the impression that the Doctor, has really suffered. So yeah, Tegan has gone to help Skibbus or Tarpok, which has left Iktar free, but it's not particularly clear. We've seen him sort of recover a bit, but then Turlough has to be post-dubbed in ADR to go look out, Commander, which hasn't. I don't think that's happened yet. Yeah. Look, so, oh no. Yeah. So, gosh, they're both on Iktar, and he's got a gun in his hand. God, they were wrestling him for a while there, and yeah, Turlough has had to add "Look out, Commander" in ADR, and then he decides to shoot Iktar, and Iktar gets his heart blown out, which is quite grim. But it does mean that it's not very clear, because there was nowhere in the shot that you could put the laser gun. And as I say, Tom Adams looks vaguely like he's got indigestion. And now he dies, but as I say, his reaction was pretty much how he'd reacted to everything else. And yet I still feel it. Because I love the way that Mark Strickson delivers that line. I think Gary Russell said something about how cheerfully he says that in the review. And yet, even though I think it's slightly flubbed, I sort of like Vorshak's death. And that shot's great. And Peter Davison, I mean, that makeup is superb. And his delivery of this line is fantastic. I mean, it's fairly straightforward stuff of war is hell and all of that sort of thing. But in Doctor Who terms, I think that's brilliantly done. It's a great way to end the story. No time for a sort of funny thing back to the TARDIS or whatever. Everybody apart from Bulick is dead. Bulick's going to have some explaining to do. And yes, not even the poor old Commander was able to see it through because of a slightly flubbed shooting that Turlough had to make sense of in post-production. Salute Matt Irvin, what a hero. And Dave Chapman, both of those guys actually were names to conjure if you were watching Doctor Who in the 80s. I think that's an absolutely perfectly enjoyable Doctor Who story with a few notorious errors or shortcomings, some of which were dictated by a quick reshuffle in timing and studio and the unavailability of the main visual effects designer. So I think there are Doctor Who stories that have committed greater crimes, and even if I can't necessarily justify my reasons for liking it, I still do. Do you know what I mean? It's guilty pleasure, I suppose, if you like. But I'm entertained by a piece of entertainment. It's done its job. Surely it's done its job, and I'm not looking at it loftily or askance. I'm perfectly happy to spend 4 episodes in the company of the crew of Seabase 4. So, my favourite, I love There Should Have Been Another Way. So I think that's got to be my favourite thing for episode 4, or my bonus thing, one or the other. I've got to choose one more thing. I think the nuclear thing and the sync operator and the premise of the two power blocks. I think that was, very important at the time, very, very resonant at the time. And I think, it's got a science fiction twist with the sync operator having to be hooked up. That gives it something that's not just, a lazy reflection of the times, as it were, and it gives the story a drive, and it gives the plot something to hook on, and it gives something for some of the characters to have. So yeah, the nuclear face-off thing with the sync operator element and the Should Have Been Another Way are my two favourite things from episode 4 of Warriors of the Deep, or one from episode 4 and one bonus. What is Jonny Morris going to wow us with for his? He's been quite brief, hasn't he?
And my best thing about episode 4 is Tom Adams, his performance as Commander Vorshak, where he could have been James Bond. He did play a sort of James Bond in the 1970s, as well as being the voice and face of DFS carpets. So Tom Adams. And then I'm allowed my bonus thing. My bonus thing is that the premise of the story, with this underground undersea base where you don't know which sides it is, doing run-throughs for a nuclear war in the future, is rather similar to the Out of the Unknown play Level 7, as produced by Irene Shubik. And I'm convinced that Toby will not be able to resist the temptation of mentioning something to do with Irene Shubik. Okay,
or Rudolph Cartier, because it's directed by...
My chance to plug my wares.
Johnny always takes the mickey out of my Who's Round podcast, because I always mention that if anyone's ever worked with Rudolph Cartier. So I thought he was going to say Toby won't resist the fact that it's directed by Rudolph Cartier, who directed Quatermass, because Johnny mocks me about that. And I nearly chose Tom Adams, but I thought I might be doing so archly. But I'm happy for him to be chosen. Love a bit of Tom Adams, and yeah, he was. I think he was considered for James Bond. Johnny's going to plug his wares.
Okay, that's all I have. My chance to plug my wares. I have lots of Doctor Who stuff coming up. I have Genetics of the Daleks might have come out by now. I have Ghosts with David Tennant and River Song. I have River Song, Queen of the Mechanoids. I have the Fourth Doctor and Leela in Day of the Comet. I have the Blogs of Doom in Doctor Who magazine. Get that every month. And I have the Monster Vault. So get all that. And who knows? By the time this is played out, I'll probably have written another 20 Big Finish audios, 2 books, and a load of magazine articles. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and cheers.
Oh, thanks, Johnny. He's a very witty man. He's got a very smart and underplayed sense of humour, but that shoots through all of his writing. And he's a very, very humble and very nice. Bizarrely, the recording cut out there. It had worked throughout the entire thing, and then when I tried to call Jonny Morris a nice man, the microphone flatly refused to accept that information. But he's a very nice man, and so I'm saying it again for the record, and it also gives me a chance to mention Dick Dixon in the 21st Century, which is written by Johnny and produced by him too. He got me to direct it. I'm a guest star in the first episode. The series regulars include Kieran Hodgson. Oh, brilliant, talented, funny Kieran Hodgson. Terry Malloy, a.k.a. Davros, and loads of voices for Big Finish. Suze Kempner, who's a multi-talented vocal performer. Jez Fielder from various Big Finishes. Dan Starkey, Strax himself, and another absolutely brilliant vocal performer. The comedian Alison June Smith rounds out the cast of this spoof of Dan Dare, Buck Rogers, and any other science fiction show you'd care to mention. Just Google Dick Dixon in the 21st Century, and there's a lot of fun to be had there. We've done a Kickstarter that's been successful, so more episodes will be produced, but the pilot is out there now, waiting to be found. So it's not a pilot of the future, it's a pilot of the right now. Well, my extra special thanks to you for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest this time around was Jonny Morris. He can be found on Twitter at Jonny Morris, no H, so Jonny, at Jonny Morris 1973, and his production company Average Romp, who produce Dick Dixon and other audio goodies, can be found at Average Romp. Do check them out and support them. And there's more than a pilot out there now. There'll be trailers for episodes 2 and 3 at the end of this programme. This programme only exists because of patrons who include Paul Carnahan, Andy Case, John Curley, Mark Dakin, John Elledge, Gary Gillett, James Gould, Lisa C. Greco, David Green, Dave Hoskin and Jessica Jones. The music is by Dave Gates and the podcast artwork by Dylan Patterson. Now, all new episodes of Dick Dixon in the 21st century.
It's a fuzzy, distorted blur, like watching BBC Two on the Isle of Wight.
I can barely make out anything through the interference, just vague shapes moving up and down.
Lieutenant Fox, can you use the computer to improve the picture quality?
Of course, Admiral. It hadn't occurred to me to do that.
That's why they made me Admiral. I think outside the box.
Applying image enhancement. Warning. The distress signal you are about to see contains images of a graphic nature that some viewers may find disturbing.
Oh dear. I hope this isn't another one of those situations where they've started eating each other.
Dick Dixon and the Love Bug is available for purchase now from www.averageromp.com. Well, all right, my lovely loves, I'm going to plug my Patreon page now. There will be another trailer for Dick Dixon after this, because there's 3 whole episodes out there now, and they really are good fun. However, my Patreon page is patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, and if you sign up to that for as little as £3 a month, although there are tiers that go up, and a couple of inducements up the ladder, but most stuff is available at the £3 mark, and you even get a 10% discount on that if you sign up for a year. But you get bonus material, you get advance releases for Happy Times and Places. You're about 6 months in advance of anyone that just tunes in on iTunes or Podbean or wherever. And there is access as well. We have a little bit of back and forth, and I take requests. I mean, nothing, I won't be dancing naked in the moonlight to the tunes of Huey Lewis and the News. Well, not at least until April. It's nice. It's nice that it's a good way of doing things. It's a modern way of doing things, isn't it? But look, I know not everyone can sign up to a monthly commitment. There's also Ko-fi, kofi.com/Toby Hadoke, where you can throw some stuff my way if you feel so inclined, or if I sound particularly hungry. But you know what costs you nothing? Going to iTunes or Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts and giving these 5 stars and a couple of lines of review, because that just really helps to separate this podcast from the very crowded market out there of Doctor Who podcasts. But mostly, I'm just grateful to you for listening, and thanks for continuing to do so. Out now, all new episodes of Dick Dixon in the 21st century.
Admiral, Professor Ship's just gone into warp. Do you know where he's warped to?
Calculating sector vectors now. Yes, he was on a bearing for the constellation of Cassiopeia.
Cassiopeia?
Yes, Dick. Cassiopeia.
The constellation of Cassiopeia? But that's uncharted space. Nobody has been there and chartered it.
Nevertheless, that's where the Professor is. The constellation of Cassiopeia.
Cassiopeia.
As I said, Cassiopeia. PG, what do you know about it?
About what?
The constellation of Cassiopeia.
The constellation of Cassiopeia. Solar system of 9 planets, one potentially capable of supporting life.
Then that must be where he's going.
But why?
There's only one way to find out. We'll have to go after him.
You're right, Dick. The Professor must be going there for a reason. But what that reason is, I just don't know. And I'm not sure I want to know. But one thing I do know is that if we don't find out, we'll never know for sure one way or the other. Lieutenant Fox, lay in a course for Cassiopeia.
Yes, Admiral. Laying in a course for Cassiopeia.
Dick Dixon and the Menagerie à Trois is available for purchase now from www.average rock.com.